Hi, everybody. How are you? Hopefully you can hear me. I think Hila's coming in a minute. Oh, there she is.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can. All right. So I think everyone's now probably been to a session, so you sort of understand the format, but we're going to give Hila the floor, and she's going to be able to present to you guys, but also answer your questions. And I think you've seen now on the right-hand side of your screen, there's a chat, so you can chat in there. I see people saying hi. So that's where you can also chat, leave your questions, and she will answer those. If you find yourself on this screen where she and I are, you can be on here, but you don't have to be in order to chat with us. So you can always click the red leave button at the top of this screen, but you will leave this screen, but you will still be able to stay in the room and ask questions and just view what's going on. So I know that was a little confusing for people. This part is kind of like Zoom, and the chat is just a way to chat, but you don't have to be on the screen to do that. So in case people still had questions about that. All right, with that said, I'm going to turn it over and look forward to this session. I know you guys are as well.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm just trying to get my screens straight so I can see all your questions. Okay, beautiful. I can see all your questions at the same time that I have my notes on here so I don't forget to cover anything that I have planned for today. All right, so we have some of you on here. So I'm just going to wait another minute, but just because we have it set up for 12 o'clock. And just generally, I'm going to talk all about the background, the beginning of play, right, with your infants and how much that affects play in the long run. And then I'll be giving you guys some tips, some ideas for play. I'll take some questions, whoever has questions, and I'll also give some ideas for independent play. And of course, we're going to cover the benefits of play because there are so many different benefits of play. So I'm just going to give a couple more seconds. All right. All right. So we shall get started. Oops. Okay. All right. So first of all, I want to cover the beginning of play from the very beginning with our infants. You come home, you have a baby. What should you do now? A common question I get asked a lot about is, when should I start playing with my baby? I want to talk a little bit more about that because it's such an important part. So almost everything your child is doing from the beginning, anything they're learning is in the category of play. So any head movement, any kind of reaction to something, they're kind of playing. So if you're talking to your child and they are looking for you, looking at you, that's a part of their play. So when parents ask, how do I play with a 1-month-old? My best answer is talk to them, allow them to hear you, look at you, be very close with them. And then as the months go up, you can kind of follow their lead and see what they are more receptive to. So that being said, I want to emphasize on the three critical aspects of play for optimal brain development in the first years of our babies. So number one is the environment that we give our children. Number two is the connection they have with the caregiver. So whether it's the mom, the dad, a nanny, or whoever it is that is mainly with your child, the connection they have with that person. And then the stimulation that we provide them with. So that being said, the peak development of our children's brain, baby's brain, are between 0 and 3 years old. So those 3 years, everything they do, everything their brain takes in is super, super critical. Their brain grows rapidly and they're taking so much in. So there are a few things that we can do with our little ones from the very beginning that will be free, simple, and help really build their brain. And by using the correct brain building activities, we strengthen the connections in our children's brains. And we build strong pathways for regulation. So regulation is something so huge that develops through play. So oftentimes we see kids that don't know how to regulate so well, or maybe they're a little bit more sensitive. And we see that in a lot of therapies, they work with kids on play. And there are a lot of kids that are so great with using play to regulate themselves. So by allowing our children to have uninterrupted playtime, we actually help them learn how to cope with their own feelings, how to regulate when necessary, and things like that. So it's such a great tool for little kids to learn, for us to be able to allow them to play independently and uninterrupted. So the few things that we can give our children in terms of play that are completely free and everybody can do are movement. So with little ones, allowing them to move as much as possible, not using any containers. Of course, we sometimes do. We use strollers, we use carriers, we use things that we put our babies in. But the more our children are on the floor, the more our children can move their bodies, the more connections their brains receive, and the better it is for their brain. So the sensory system of our little ones takes information in through their eyes, through their ears, through their nose, through their touch. So that's such an important aspect of the play, to allow them to touch, feel, smell. And that's why movement is so important to start from a very, very young age. So a lot of parents say, my baby doesn't like to be on the floor. So we can work together to find a way to make it enjoyable for your little one. You never want to have them suffering. You never want to have them unhappy where they are. If your little one is not happy on the floor alone, maybe they want you with them. If your little one is getting bored on the floor, maybe we put them next to a window and they really enjoy the shadows and they take all this information in through all their sensories. And then we have music. Music is like one of the biggest things that we can provide our children with. Kids love, they regulate through music. There's so much enjoyment that they get from that. And then we have language and literacy, which is so much through play as well. And then what else is most important is the exposure that kids get. So it could be anything from the moment they're born and on. So the brain processes the information that is sent into their bodies, right? And then the message received by the body and the brain connections, and therefore our children learn more and more and more. This is actually called the sensory motor loop, the sensory motor loop. And the more our children do it, the more they receive things and their connections, and the more the sensory motor loop works, the more important it is for our brain development. And like I said before, between 0 to age 3, the brain processes so much, and it's so critical for little ones. It helps them with the body coordination, the way they respond to things, and like I said before, self-regulation. So I'm going to share a few different examples of how we can provide our children with benefits through play. So one is emotional regulation, like I said before. It helps improve their fine and gross motor skills. For instance, when they're riding a toy or picking up small toys or using little tools or building a puzzle, that's an example of working on their fine and gross motor skills. It really promotes creative thinking. So it depends on the type of play you provide for your little one. We really allow them to expand their imagination, things like playing dress up or playing with dolls. It really helps with impulse control and social skills. So for instance, when kids play with other kids, they learn to take turns. Whether they're playing with you or with a kid, you're working on taking turns, and that really helps them with their social skills. And then helps them with real life lessons. So playing with an imaginary kitchen or even a real kitchen, or tools in your own kitchen with you. It really helps them with real life lessons. That's something that, for instance, the Montessori method really works on real life lessons and incorporating real life examples through play. And we see that often that they won't use a pretend kitchen. It will be like a real, like they would convert a pretend kitchen into a real play. And then the children really learn how to put their own food, get their own drinks, and do these type of things. Now, the one of the most important questions that I always receive is how to promote independent play with our children. So the things I mentioned at the beginning about the benefits of play and how we can help little ones regulate and all those things are a big part of promoting independent play. So one thing we want to remember is we never want to interrupt our children when they are playing. So if your child is playing and you think they're doing something wrong, let them do it wrong. There's no wrong way when it comes to playing. Playing is learning, and whatever way your child is playing with a specific toy or not with a toy, they are learning. Sometimes they'll put the puzzle pieces wrong, and that's something that we can help tell them, oh, are you sure about that? And kind of let them decide if they made the right decision or not with the puzzle. So a puzzle is an example of a non-open-ended toy. So there's one way to do it. But when they play with, if they're playing with drums, for instance, and they are hitting, the drum is the other way. And you want to tell them, oh, turn the drum around and then you can tap on it. I would advise against it and letting children to really learn things on their own, try things differently, because if they're not trying it their way, we are kind of making them think that they are not doing something properly and they have to rely on you to learn how to do something properly. So when our children play, do your best to not interrupt them, do your best to not ask them questions, and to not distract them when they're playing. So that would really, really help in the long run for your little ones to learn how to play independently and continue with whatever they're doing. Now, another thing I want you to remember is that children's attention span is so little. I actually did a post about this not too long ago. So it's really from 0 to 3, the attention span is anywhere from like a minute to like 5 or 6 minutes. So when you're seeing your children going from one thing to another thing to another thing, that's totally normal. Don't think that your child is all over the place. Don't think that they have ADD or anything like that. This is normal behavior of children when they're playing. And a lot of times we notice children are kind of squatting. And I was reading about this, that children do that because they're always ready to go from one thing to the next. So unless they're really sitting down, they're still exploring. They're still trying to go from one thing to the next thing. So let them do it. Let them explore. Let them be their little scientists and do their own thing. So my big 3 tips in helping children, and I'm talking here about probably a little bit older, like toddlers, maybe from 1 to 3, help them really promote independent play, which is really hard because children sometimes go through separation anxiety phases, and that happens, and that's fine, and you can be there with them. But these 3 tools are really going to help kind of put the core in there and give your children the right tools they need to get there. So number 1 is creating a yes space. So that term was actually created by Janet Lansbury. And I love this way of saying it. So the idea is basically that if you're locked out of your room, out of your house for 2 hours, your child is in a space that they are completely safe and they're fine without you. If, God forbid, you're stuck out of the house for 2 hours, nothing will happen to your child. They're in a space that everything is completely safe for them. So it's not as easy to do all the time, but it's really important. So when we create this yes space for our children, we are not interrupting them when they're playing. We're not telling them they can't do something. We're allowing them to use absolutely anything in the space. be free in this place, in this space, and play with whatever it is that their mind is taking them to. So that's number one. And that being said, it's also it really limiting the interaction and the distraction is key. So less distracted your child will be when they're playing, the better they'll do when they're playing longer. They'll be playing longer better. The second thing is minimizing the clutter. So that kind of goes with what I was saying earlier. So the less cluttered the space is, so the less toys we have, the less of other objects we have, the better our children can do when they are playing, when they're sitting down and playing by themselves or with us. So if you don't have a playroom, for instance, and your child is playing in the living room, I would put an emphasis on making that space safe, making that space less distracted to your child. So not putting items there that they can't touch, not putting items there that would distract them. Having a TV screen on, very distractive. So your child can't really focus on playing. I know a lot of people say, my child plays fine, even with the TVs on, but just think about yourself sitting there and trying to work on the computer and the TV's on and someone's on the other side, or there's, I don't know, food in front of you or whatever it is. It's really distracting and you can't get your work done to the full effect. So when your child is sitting there on the floor and then the TV's on and maybe they're not completely staring at it, but every few minutes they're looking up at it, it's distracting them and they can't focus on their play and moving forward with whatever it is that their brain is taking them towards with this play. So maybe it's distracting their ideas of what they want to do next. So I would really, really put an effort on making sure the space is not distracting and not cluttered. So minimize the clutter. Everybody, including kids, do better with less clutter. And then the third thing is implementing a toy rotation system. So I talk a lot about this on my Mama Guide page on Instagram. I share about this every time I do a toy rotation. I talk about how I organize behind the scenes, like everything I have in my storage closet. And then I talk about how I rotate them, what I choose to put out there. And the more I learned about this, the more I realized how beneficial it is for all children. So some people tell me, well, my kid is not into this, my kid is not into that. Just like anything else, it will take some time. So you might do a toy rotation at first and your child's going to be like, where are all my toys? So it's something you may want to do with them. You're not going to go from having everything out there to not having anything out. And then your child is kind of like, where's everything I had? So maybe you're decluttering with your child. Maybe you're explaining to them. And I'm a true believer that every change we make, everything we do, we should be speaking with our children about this. They understand more than we think. So if you're working on decluttering the room and creating a toy rotation, you tell your children, we're going to put some of our toys out, and then we're going to bring the ones that we really, really want to play with out so we can play with those only. And when we're done with them, we're going to bring out new toys. So you really prep them for this change. You don't just do it abruptly. And the idea is always putting about 20% of your toys out. So it doesn't necessarily depend on age. Of course, like before they're crawling, they're much smaller, so you'll be the one bringing the toys for them. But once they're crawling, once they're walking, once they're moving, for toddlers, it's much easier to have like a display space where you can put toys, you can put baskets, you can put bins for your child to take something out, bring it to the rug or to wherever it is that they're going to play, bring it out and play with it. So when we provide less toys out at a time, we allow them to play with the toys properly, play with them uninterrupted, and from there they really learn to focus on those. And sometimes you can put toys that go well with each other. For instance, things that I like to do, I'll put like magnetic tiles and I'll pair with little people, or I'll pair with cars, so then they can play with it together and they'll let their imagination lead their way in creating, for instance, maybe a house for the little dolls or a car garage for the cars. So when I just want to make sure I'm not missing out of what I spoke and confirming the time. Okay, perfect. So we have 10 more minutes on this. So when we follow our children's lead, we're able to see what they're interested in. So for instance, my son, there was a period of time that he really, really loved opening containers and boxes, everything that came in the mail. So I noticed that interest in him. And what I did for him is I took some of the boxes that came in and I wrapped them up again and put random stuff inside. And then I gave him some, scissors that are age appropriate for him, and different tools from his own toolbox to open these boxes. And he was so interested in it, and he did that. So that was a part of the rotation for that week. Now, I don't do a play rotation every week. I do it maybe every month or so, sometimes more. But when I when I notice their interest, when I notice their interests and I follow their interests and I provide those toys that they're interested in, and you don't necessarily have to see what toys they're interested in. You can follow what they're interested in throughout the day. So for instance, my son was interested in opening these boxes. It's not a toy, but it's something that interests him. It's a stage that he's in. And I allowed him to be able to do that in his playroom. So anytime I see they're not playing with something, it's been 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 days, I'll rotate that specific item out. Whenever they are completely out of everything, like they're not really playing with anything, I'll do a big toy rotation. So when I create a space where they can play in, when I declutter it, when I do a play rotation, I allow my child to play better, and I prep them for success. I allow them to be successful in their play, to play independently. And it might not always look like, oh my God, my child is playing in there for 30 minutes independently. Sometimes it'll be 5 minutes independent. And sometimes they'll just want you nearby. The key is to not really interfere, only when they want you. So if they're asking you to play with them, you could. But if your child is just playing and they just need you close by and you're doing whatever it is that you're doing close by, start with that. And then little by little, you say, mommy's going to the kitchen to get some water and mommy's going to be back. And when you do these type of things, you'll notice that your child is going to start doing so much better playing independently. And I'm going to take some questions about that because I know a lot of you want to know more about toy rotation, and I'm seeing some of the questions coming in, so I'll be answering them right at the end. I want to go over some of the play ideas with babies. So at first I talked about, your child following you, looking at you, whether you're playing with a high contrast item for your child to follow or putting them on the floor. That's a great idea. With little babies as well, stretching their bodies, helping them with their arms, stretching them, moving the body. The more the body moves, the better it is for brain connections, like I mentioned before. So there's a really great exercise that's, I guess, really famous or really common to do with your little ones, is taking the arm to the opposite leg and then the both sides. So that's a great connection for the arms, and that's what works when your little ones start crawling. So making those connections and helping them do that when they're little, super, super important. Like I said before, visual tracking. And visual tracking is even great for kids that are a little bit older than the newborn stage. Emphasize on outside play. So much our little ones learn from outside play. And then sensory play, which I did an entire blog post about, some of our favorite easy sensory play ideas for little ones. So sensory play doesn't have to be what you imagine, like sticky, gross, or mess kind of things. Almost anything our children do is sensory. So like I said, in my blog post, I share so much about that. So if you would like to share more about this, I think Tracy will be sending more information at the end of this. And I'm sure she'll have like my website, and you guys can go on there and check out the blog post. But sensory play does not always have to be messy. There's so much children can do. Even music is sensory. They're listening, they're hearing. There's so many things that children can do in terms of sensory. And there's so many things you can start with really early on as infants with sensory, whether it's, sticking the little Ziploc bag with some water and pom-poms in it and having your child just tap on it on the floor. That's a great one. That was one of my kids' favorites, actually. And then reading. Reading is something that sometimes we start really late because we think that they're babies and they don't they don't understand it, and what's the point of reading? And I disagree with that. I think that children's receptive part of their brain is taking so much in, and the more we give to that receptive part, better, more it's better for their brain. So as soon as you can start reading books for your children, start. Always have books a part of your play rotation, part of your playroom, not just for nighttime reading. And then that's pretty much all I wanted to cover for today. So we have just a few more minutes left on here that I can start answering some of your questions. So let's see what we have on here. All right, so Sharon is asking, what is the maximum number of toys to have in their playroom? So that's actually a very, very common question. There's no maximum amount of toys, in my opinion. I think that there's the 2080 rule that a lot of people follow. So putting everything in storage or in a closet away is a great idea. And then kind of displaying the amount of toys that you think your child would be interested in. Now, in our space, we have things like a teepee where they read books. We have a play kitchen where they're playing in the kitchen. I don't necessarily consider those things as a part of the play rotation. So I'll rotate certain things in the play kitchen sometimes, so it's a little bit more interesting. But I think about maybe 20 toys out at a time would be perfect. Sometimes you'll have more. It really depends also on your size, how many children you have. So kind of thinking, stepping away for a moment, looking and seeing, is this too much? Does this look overstimulating to them? Sometimes putting toys that are in different categories, like maybe something that's more like, a puzzle, and then they have also like musical things. So things that work on different parts at the same time. So I hope that answered your question. How often should we do the toy rotation? Change them up weekly or monthly? I think following your child's lead is most important in understanding how often you should do a toy rotation. People have different schedules. I've gone through times for 2 months I haven't done any rotation, not even change a couple of toys. And then there are times where the kids are home all the time, like when they're out of school and they're playing in the playroom a lot. So I'll rotate more often. Sometimes I'll do like 2 toys at a time, and I'm noticing that I'm doing this maybe every other day, or if they have specific requests for something, then I'll say, okay, let's put something away. And sorry for the airplane noise. And just really following their lead. I would say about once a month is safe to do a good rotation. And then if you see that they're not touching something, rotate it out or display it differently or display it in a different place. Sometimes we have kind of like an 8 cubicle thing for our kids. I don't know if you can see it here so much, but like this cubicle toys, this was like for his age back then, but I'll move things around sometimes and put them in different places, and it already grabs their attention differently. So just moving things around sometimes makes a huge difference. What age is recommended to start reading books for your child? As early as possible, a few weeks old. Us, when my son was about doing. So I love the right approach. I love other approaches as well. The more we learn, the better we can do, the more tools we have. So I would say read about it, learn about it. There is a few books by Magda Gerber and Janet Lansbury that are incredible if you are interested in learning more about the RIE method. Old, is it okay to encourage some independent play now, experiencing some separation anxiety, but he does well if I just sit in his play area near him. Yes, sitting with them is great. Playing a little peekaboo with them and showing mommy goes, mommy comes back, mommy goes, mommy comes. Little, I would have them like kind of playing right there. So this is, I'm sitting in my kitchen, so they would play right there so they can kind of see me. I would set some toys for them like under that table. They would play there, they can see me, and it would really help with that separation anxiety feel. So if you can set a space for them at that age where they're near you with whatever it is that you need to do, that's great. If you can do little peekaboo games and show mommy goes where, mommy's going to come right back, and doing it more and more, little by little, really helps them understand that, okay, mommy leaves and she's coming right back, so I can still sit here and play. I don't love the idea of just like running away and not telling them you're going. It kind of creates distrust with our little ones, even from that little of an age. Tracy, yes, we'll share all links. Great. So Tracy will share all the links. Yes, you guys can follow my Mama Guide page. There's full highlights about play ideas. There are highlights about the playroom and how I do our toy rotation. You guys can follow. How do you decide which toys you put into your toy rotation? Again, follow your child's lead. Sometimes I'll create a little invitation to play for them. Other times I just follow their lead and do it. If there are toys that they don't want me to take away because I see that they're still playing with it, I won't rotate them out. So it's really important to follow their lead. Don't take away toys that they're still engaged with. And yes, recommended. I have a 1 and a 4-year-old who can distract each other. Should we give them alone time? You can definitely allow them to have some of their own times alone playing. Alone time playing is important, but letting them play together and figuring it out. And, you know, with those type of distractions, it's fine. I have 2 kids too, my 3-year-old, 3.5-year-old, and 22-month-old. They distract each other, but they really learn to play with that distraction from one another. And they kind of involve each other as well. So I wouldn't necessarily if they're